Welcome to a session in which we will discuss supplier credit policies. In the 4C plus E business viability framework, as part of the second step, we discussed points about capabilities of a business. Capabilities are what a business can do and what it cannot do. We define capabilities using skills, equipment and available time for the entrepreneur to work on the business. These three are essential in making products and delivering services to customers of the business. But making products and delivering services also require raw material and sometimes services which come from suppliers specializing in them. Not only do businesses look to buy these as cheaply as possible, but they also would like to buy these on credit. Supplier credit policy is an important aspect which helps a business decide from which supplier they should buy which raw material and services. We will closely look at credit policies of suppliers here. But let's first remind ourselves about typical customer segments for businesses. A business may sell to customer segments such as institutions, businesses and wholesalers who usually buy in large quantities. But these buyers expect credit in addition to discounts, which means their payments to a business are usually many days after the delivery of products and services to them. Because of these delayed payments due to credit terms, businesses often feel the crunch of working capital. This is where supplier credit policies become important. We must realize that for a supplier, the business to which it is selling its product is a customer. Hence, what a raw material buyer business calls a supplier credit policy, they are called customer credit policies by the supplier. From a business's point of view, its supplier credit policies have three important parameters. The first parameter is about the amounts for which the credit is extended by the supplier to the business. The second is the duration of the credit that will be allowed for the business. And finally, the third parameter is about the penalties or consequences in the case the business delays payments or does not make payments at all. Let us look closely at each of these three parameters. We will begin with the first parameter, which is about the amount of credit. Usually, suppliers offer credit only to those businesses who are long-time or repeat customers. New customers don't get credit immediately until they have made timely payments for some time. As a new business owner, an entrepreneur must expect to negotiate with suppliers. While a business owner is tempted to ask for a lot of credit, it is not a good idea to do so. It only defers the payments to a later date and hence can put pressure on future cash flows. A business must look at the amount of credit it has given to its customers and try to negotiate a similar amount from its suppliers. This way, the cash inflow and the cash outflow amounts will match or be as close as possible to each other. The second parameter is about the length of the term while getting credit from suppliers. Once again, a business is tempted to ask very long payment terms. But as we saw in the previous parameter, this simply postpones the payment to a later date. Depending on what is happening in the business at that time, it would create a lot of pressure on cash outflows. Here too, a business should try to match the duration of credit given to its customers with the duration of credit taken from its suppliers. Before we move on to the third parameter, it is worth digressing a bit. Like businesses, suppliers too work in a competitive environment. So, it is possible to negotiate with them. But it is equally true that suppliers are supplying raw material to many businesses and hence to many customers. So, a business must consider what is a normal practice in her type of business when it comes to asking for credit from suppliers. For example, if most grocery shops in the area are getting a credit for 15 days from wholesalers, then a new grocery shop in the village may have to accept the same terms from the wholesaler. So, in practice, it may be hard for businesses to negotiate better than available terms from suppliers unless they are a very large customer for those suppliers. The third and final parameter of supplier credit policies is about penalties or consequences in case of delayed payments or non-payments by the business. Most suppliers are persistent and they visit or call customers frequently to collect delayed payments. So, usually businesses have little choice in this matter. An important point every business owner must keep in mind is that if she delays the payment or refuses to pay a supplier, then her reputation in the market is tarnished. If that happens, then most other suppliers will not be willing to give raw material or service. And if they do agree, then they may ask for an advance or an immediate payment. Hence, for every business, it is good to know what the supplier is charging as penalties, but it is best not to let things reach that point. Just like customer credit policies, supplier credit policies too are not static in nature. As a business undergoes changes and as its owner becomes more experienced, she must renegotiate supplier credit policies to help the business grow. It is also not necessary for a business to follow only one set of supplier credit policies. A business may negotiate different policies with different suppliers based on the amount of raw material or services they buy from them. For businesses using seasonal raw material, supplier credit policies become even more important. There is usually a big increase in the required working capital during the raw material season. For example, a mango pickle business which uses raw mangoes as raw material needs to be ready with a very large working capital during early summer months. Hence, such a business should carefully negotiate credit policies with raw mango suppliers to reduce the pressure of cash outflows. Perhaps a staggered payment over a 3-month period can be negotiated, but often such negotiations will succeed only if the supplier gets something out of them. The raw mango supplier in this case is likely to charge a higher price for accepting later payments. Just creating and when needed changing supplier credit policies is not enough for a business. Every owner must keep a record of supplier related credit transactions in Credit Taken Register, which we have discussed in a session covering records kept in a business. The Credit Taken Register is a systematic log of how much the business owes and to whom. Typically, every day there are 5 things recorded in it for every credit transaction. The first is the name of the person from whom credit is taken, followed by the credit amount. The third item is the date on which the business is expected to pay the due amount. The register then also tracks if the money has been paid to the supplier or not. And if it is paid, then finally, what was the actual date on which the due amount was paid by the business. To summarize, receiving credit from suppliers is important as doing so helps the business manage its working capital better. But business owners must be very careful about not taking too much credit from their suppliers as this creates pressure on future cash outflows. Every business must have credit policies in place for its suppliers. These supplier credit policies should cover 3 things. 1. Credit amount limits that each supplier is offering. 2. duration of credit that will be allowed by each supplier, and finally, third, penalties or consequences in case the business delays payments or does not pay. While accepting or negotiating credit policies with suppliers, a business owner must keep in mind its own customer policies so as to match the cash inflows and cash outflows. Supplier credit policies must be dynamic and they should change based on the business's experience and the changing conditions of the business. Every owner must keep a record of supplier related credit transactions in credit taken register and periodically review the records. That in a nutshell is about supplier credit policies.